So I think new coaches can worry about the feel of a coaching session being a bit like therapy and hence pressure to move to action or doing. What's the differentiator between holding good coaching space and listening and therapy?
Yeah, this is something that's come up. And I think the distinction between coaching and therapy is not there's no huge stark line except that a therapist will works from a model that wants to identify like the therapist is the expert. They want to identify patterns and then prescribe a treatment plan. So they might even give a diagnosis. That's what a therapist is trained to do. Coaching, a coach doesn't do that. So the fundamental foundation that a coach stands on is curiosity, empathetic listening, and asking questions. So that's the foundation. Where I feel like people get uncomfortable or like say, "Hey, this is therapy, this is coaching," kind of thing, is when you're dealing with emotion, especially like tears or anger or like intense emotion. I don't think it's fair from a therapist standpoint, a therapy standpoint, to say coaches should not address intense emotion. That's just therapy does not own emotion. It's no one owns emotion. Emotion is a human. We're human beings. Emotion is a natural part of every single human being's like life, and I've had a university group say this coaching feels to me like too much like therapy because you're dealing with emotions and tears and I was open to thinking seeing their perspective going through it, but the more I thought about it, the more I thought no, this is off, this is not okay. I feel like it would be like saying a parent is not allowed to deal with emotions of their child. They should go to a trained therapist and specialist to deal with the emotions of their child. This to me is it's like a similar kind of thing where I'm like, no, 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 no. It's anyone can deal with emotion. So that's where I feel like this, that to me is where I feel like this question is coming from. And the more I sit with it, the stronger I feel like my response to this is. And yeah, I feel emotion around
There's the
this.
emotion.
I feel emotion around this question. Because it matter because it really matters because I mean imagine it just feels like no like I don't know I could get into that idea of it's to me that this is the crux of why I feel like coaching is it's not just why coaching is necessary, and it's because our society is suffering from a perspective that we need to rely on experts to tell us what to do, and experts know best. They don't. An expert doesn't know all the areas of your life. No expert, no one does that. No one knows all. No one knows you more. No one knows you better than you know yourself, and all the things. And what like sure there are people who have an expertise in something, but if that expertise bulldozes over the empowerment of the client, then that's I don't think that is that's not coaching. That's not an empowerment based model. And I feel like our society does benefit from knowledge basis. Like there are benefits to using experts, to having experts in our lives, to people who know things, who share things, who share their ideas. Yeah, that's priceless. But this idea that these experts somehow own emotion and no one else can address emotion or deal with emotion, that I think that way oversteps. And yeah, that I have strong emotion around that.
What would you call that emotion that you're experiencing? I'm just curious.
It feels a little exasperated, like, uh, and uh, I understand where I understand where they're coming from. I can see it. I can totally see it. I can see, yeah, there it makes sense if as a coach you're working with a client and there is something happening with the mental health of the client that's beyond you as a coach to address and deal with. Yes, absolutely, it makes sense to work with and partner with a therapist that you can consult with and do work with. I did when I had a large practice, and we would talk about, I would be open with clients as part of my agreement and say, you know what, if this needs to move into therapy, then I will work with the therapist on this and consult, and then we can figure out what needs to happen next.
Mm.
There have been clients that I referred to the therapist. She was great, and and vice versa, she would refer clients to me, and that to me is how I feel like these two professions should work together. I don't feel like the professions should work together where it says therapist said no, like you can't have these kinds of conversations to talk about emotion if you're not trained as a therapist. I do not agree with that. And yeah, so I guess my emotion, I don't know, a little exasperation. Yeah, that's where I'll leave it.
Yeah. And I agree with you, John, as well. I think emotions, I mean, you get such a bad rap. I mean, especially in the executive coaching world as
Mm-hmm.
well. And I've heard this, we've had this conversation, and I do a lot of women in leadership work, and, things like, in the group sometimes, oh, I don't want to cry, or I don't want to show this vulnerability, or women are emotional.
Hmm.
And like, what does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not just crying, is it? If I think about all the emotions that I show, passion and joy, and sometimes I do feel anger, but a great coach is going to ask me about that anger and what that anger is telling me and what that call to action might
That's
be.
right. That's right.
And I have clients cry all the time in sessions, because when you're exploring values as well
Mm-hmm.
and beliefs, and that's connected to who you are and human nature, how can you not be emotive?
I know. I know. I mean, so even historically, like the whole idea of emotion and stoicism, and we go back to ancient Rome, which I studied as an undergrad. It's basically my classics. That's what I looked at. There's this idea that emotion was, I mean, this is where it comes from, the idea from stoicism that emotion is negative, that people who are experiencing emotion were suffering. I mean, the word passion, even it comes from the Latin word patio, which means to suffer. So there's an idea that in classical philosophy that human beings could escape the, I don't know, tangles of their bodily selves and operate on like this higher level if we could only get over and not be attached to emotion. And then that idea totally flipped. It's was flipped on the head by the Romantics in the 1800s. So then you have this, then you have a flipping of it, and then you have this idea that no, emotion is this beautiful thing that we can address, that we can nurture, that we can embrace, and these cultural, societal, philosophical forces are still out there. We're still working our way through this, and we will always. I mean, this is a human question.